Hey guys, so for this video, I'm going to talk about some tips and tricks you can use to dominate an arena. As you should know, everyone's arena points reset because of the new season, which means we're all on the grind back to champion division. The thing is, we're in Fortnite season 12 now. Not only is the game completely different compared to last season, but the player base is different as well. Most people know how to box fight, sort of how to rotate, and at least in my experience, how to perfectly grief your game. Seriously though, getting to champion is not going to be easy, so take out a pencil, a piece of paper, and pay attention, as this is my Chapter 2 Season 2 guide to Arena. Before I get into the juicy stuff, I quickly want to cover the point or the hype system most of you overlook. For solos, you get 60 hype for placing top 25, 30 for placing top 15, another 30 for top 5, and 60 hype for a win. On top of that, you get 20 hype per elimination and a bus fare depending on which league you are in. It starts with the Open 3 division at 10 hype and ends with the highest champion division at 80. We honestly only care about everything up until contender 3. Now, if you played Arena last season, you would know this is the same exact format as before. Placement is much more valuable and reliable since top 15 will get you more hype than 4 kills, so your goal is to stay alive. I know that's not the fun option because you could be out there W keying and killing everyone, but playing placement is the safest and easiest way to climb. Anyways, with that stuff out of the way, let's actually get into the main focus of the video, which is playing out the early game, the mid game, and the late game. Beginning with the early game, and my first tip is to find a good drop spot. My favorite spot is the gas station behind Frenzy that doubles as a Shadow Henchman safe house, but there are tons of amazing solo and duo spots all throughout the map. If you need help finding one, then either watch my video where I showcase a bunch of great solo looting routes, or use a website like lootlake.info to devise your own. The reason you want to have only one main spot, especially if you're trying to climb an arena, is just to eliminate as much RNG as you can. RNG means randomness and is what makes the early game so annoyingly difficult. There's RNG in what you get from chests, floor loot, who lands around you, and where the zone goes. However, when you always land at the same spot, you'll slowly begin to eliminate some of that RNG. For example, I know I'm safe and I won't get into a fight for the first few minutes of the match until someone who lands near the bridge or at the red house rotates over. That gives me an idea on how long I have to farm up materials, find a shotgun, and get full shield before I could end up in an engagement. Even more important though is that I know where I'm likely to get engaged upon. Most of the time, that's while I'm still inside the bunker and they try to sneak up in through the dumpster or telepody. No matter where exactly it is, the point is that I'm never surprised or taken off guard, which would happen a lot if I had a different drop spot each game. My next early game tip is for the drop off the battle bus. In the past, I've always said to land on floor loot when you can because you know what you're getting. I still do stand behind this, and I will always land on something like a gray tack when I see one. But if you're landing at a house or building, always land on a chest spawn. Ever since Chapter 2, chests have a 100% spawn rate, meaning they will always be there. This is much different than before Chapter 2, where chests had a random spawn rate. Sometimes they just would not spawn at all, which is why I never advise landing on them. Then the other big change that happened was that Epic vaulted bolt action snipers in Season 2 and removed fishing rods from chests. That means you're basically guaranteed an AR, SMG, shotgun, or pistol from a chest. With floor loot on the other hand, sometimes it will just be heals or materials. So again, unless there's a tack or an SMG on the ground near your drop spot, always land on chest spawns. Still on the early game, and another helpful tip is figuring out your loadout. This should go hand in hand with your landing location and loot route because you always want to have an ideal loadout in mind. For me, that's an upgraded shotgun, which I get by using the decoy grenade trick and killing all the henchmen, as well as an AR, SMG if I have a pump, minis, and floppers. Mind you, if you're someone who doesn't land near any water, then your loadout will be completely different. You cannot expect to get a heavy sniper or C4s if you don't land near a vault spot, or floppers and slurp fish if you do not land near fishing holes. You gotta be realistic and do your best to come into the mid game with that perfect inventory. My last little early game tip is to be aware that Epic changed the timer on the first zone. Instead of making it 3 minutes to completely close in, it now takes 4. So even if that change was mainly intended for people dropping at the new spots and the edge of the map, it helps out everyone if you're aware of it. Moving on to the bulk of the video, and that is the mid game. This is where you should have close to max mats and a realistically ideal loadout. Your one goal at this point is just to rotate. Literally, that's it. You can either rotate on foot or with a launch pad if you're forced to. You just need to rotate. A helpful trick I always always use is to pull up my map after the next zone pops up, mark the center of it, and then do my absolute best to get there. Obviously, this is much easier said than done, but if you can get there without getting into any fights and avoiding everyone, then do it. Just because you see someone rotating in front of you or to your side does not mean you have to shoot them. I feel like this is something people forget, and it's a big reason why they get into mid-game fights and die. Of course, you're gonna get pushed or held in zone if you shoot someone in the back while they're rotating. Be smarter than that and avoid it entirely by just rotating to your marker without shooting at them. Next tip for when you get there is to base up around a tree, a rock, or a building, preferably on high ground. This is so you can build a 1x1 and then farm whatever object you based up on to get back max mats. I do this a lot inside buildings where I'll break all the doors and windows to make sure I can't get shot, and I'll also do this trick with extra materials I have from an enemy that I eliminated. Speaking of eliminations, the mid-game should, in theory, be similar to the early game in that you do not get a ton of kills. The only two situations I recommend fighting are when you get someone really low while rotating to center circle, or you unfortunately get pushed by some absolute maniac. Either way, I tend to avoid these fights because they almost always turn into box fights. The problem with box fights is that they make you very susceptible to getting third-partied, and in the current meta, box fights are way less skilled than before. Why? Well, mainly because of the removal of traps. I can't even begin to tell you guys how many psychopaths have jumped into my box in the past few days. And before you say that it's a smart play, I agree that it can be when the other person is low. I even advised you guys to do this in my other video, and I still think it's smart. With no traps in the game, there's no fear of jumping in people's boxes to secure a kill. The key word there though is secure. It is not a smart play to jump into someone's box when you haven't even done damage to them. This creates a 50-50 that you could have easily avoided. By the way, if you're getting pushed, the only thing you can do now is to fight back and keep building and moving. Other players will not hesitate to take your wall or phase in and try to spray you to death. So because you don't have traps, you have to use all the non-trap tricks I showed in my counter aggression videos. That's stuff like side jumping out of your box, editing down out of it to reset, and making different edit peaks to take your opponent off guard. It's also stuff like taking a tac shotgun and extra heals to help you survive drawn out fights and 50-50s. All in all, with the current W key jump in boxes meta, you gotta adapt or be left in Contenders League. Back to rotations, and you want to do your best to get to center zone for circles 1 through 3. This won't always be possible, and a lot of the time you'll be stuck on the edge, but whenever you can, center zone is the best option. On top of that, when you base up in zone, do it in brick or metal. Wood is simply way too weak for any zone past the first or second, and you'll be at a much higher risk of getting sprayed at. Easily my favorite thing to do in the mid game is to sit in a cone and collect information. All you do is just jump into the top of a 1x1, edit the cone without selecting any tiles, and you can see everything that's going on around you. Usually I just sit there and plan my next rotation. Sometimes though, I'll get a little cheeky and edit up one side to take shots on my opponents. Second to last note about the mid game is planning for the half and half zone. This is the 5th circle of the match that is half inside the zone and half outside of it. The way you play around it is by basing up on the edge of the 4th circle and not the center. This way you take the gamble, while at center zone, you will never ever be inside of it. Final thing I wanted to say regarding the mid game is to plan your rotations. Plan where you're going to rotate to, how you're going to rotate, aka with a launch pad or walking, and when you're actually going to rotate. In this clip, you can see the 4th circle is in a weird spot for me, so I place my marker on the left edge for where I want to go. The reason I decide to rotate down and around is because I know nobody's by the beach side and I have a free rotation. Then, as you can see, after I make it to zone, I use my other tip and base up near a rock to get some mats. I definitely should have stayed more towards the edge, but it doesn't really matter because I lose the gamble and get a max half and half zone. Still, I plan again where to rotate, which is from the bottom up towards the top, and make it to the half and half circle. The last stage of the game, which commences after the 5th zone, is the end game. And unlike the mid game, your rotations here are going to be a lot more chaotic. Therefore, your sole goal is to survive and get into the next safe zone. It doesn't matter whether you end up on the edge or center of it, on high ground, mid ground, or low ground, you just want to stay alive. Keep in mind, high ground is definitely the most advantageous, but don't force yourself to try and get up to it. Definitely my most important tip for the end game is that you want to master as many tunneling techniques as you can. The most important ones are the standard box tunnel, the single ramp tunnel, or the ramp wall tunnel. All of these methods will keep you protected from people shooting at you as you rotate. Another obvious this late game tip is that this is the time to utilize all of your utility. If you're a flopper boy like me, that means sitting in zone and rotating late. Or if you get lucky and have a mythic grappler, you can use that too. Whatever the utility may be, do not tunnel vision and forget to use it. Lastly, remember that this is the time to look for picks and to take shots on opponents while they rotate. Even if it's a measly 10 damage pump, trust me when I say the shot is worth taking. You never know how low someone might be, what loot they might have to help you win, or how impactful their death may be. So I know I didn't go too in depth into the late game. Let me know down below if I should make a full late game guide. I just feel like most people know how to play them out from zone wars or watching pros, which is again why the hardest part of the game to me is actually making it to the end game consistently. Overall guys, that is how to do better in arena and reach champion division. So if you guys learned something new or found the video useful, then do be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and to turn on my post notifications. Shout out to everyone using code Jarian. I really do appreciate every single one of you guys who uses my code. Even if you don't and you watch the videos, I still love you too. Otherwise, that's it from me, and I will see you guys in the next one. Later.